Poor single mom paid for a stranger's coffee, not knowing she was a millionaire on a secret test. The alarm clock's harsh beeping cut through the thin walls of the cramped apartment at 5:30 a.m. Sarah Mitchell groaned, her body protesting as she rolled out of the lumpy mattress that served as her bed. Through the paper-thin walls, she could hear her 7-year-old daughter Emma still sleeping peacefully in the bedroom, the only real bedroom in their small one-bedroom apartment in downtown Portland, Oregon. Sarah had given Emma the bedroom months ago when they'd been forced to downsize after her ex-husband stopped paying child support. The living room couch had become Sarah's bed, her clothes stuffed into 2 garbage bags in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Morning. Sunshine, Sarah whispered to herself, catching her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, and her blonde hair, desperately in need of a cut she couldn't afford, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. At 31, she looked older, worn down by the weight of keeping everything together. The coffee maker was broken, had been for 3 weeks now, but Sarah had gotten creative. She heated water in a pot and poured it over instant coffee grounds in a mason jar. It tasted terrible, but caffeine was caffeine, and she needed all the help she could get for another double shift at Murphy's Diner. "Mommy," Emma's sleepy voice called from the bedroom. "I'm here, baby," Sarah called back, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. "Get dressed for school, okay? Mrs. Patterson will pick you up in an hour." Sarah was grateful for their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had offered to take Emma to school on her way to her part-time job at the library. It saved Sarah the bus fare and gave her an extra 30 minutes to get to the diner. As Sarah pulled on her uniform, a faded pink dress with Murphy's Diner embroidered on the pocket, she mentally calculated their finances. Rent was due in Satotina 5 days, $800. She had $340 in her checking account. Tips from the diner had been slower this month, and her second job, cleaning offices at night, barely covered groceries and Emma's school supplies. "We'll figure it out," she murmured, the same mantra she repeated every morning. "We always do." Emma emerged from the bedroom, her brown hair in pigtails, wearing her favorite dress, a hand-me-down from Sarah's co-worker that was slightly too big, but made Emma feel like a princess. "Mommy, can I have pancakes today?" Emma asked hopefully, climbing onto one of the 2 mismatched chairs at their tiny kitchen table. Sarah's heart clenched. Emma had been asking for pancakes for weeks, but they didn't have the ingredients, and Sarah couldn't justify spending money on syrup when they needed every dollar for rent. "How about some toast with peanut butter?" Sarah suggested, already reaching for the discount bread. "We can make it extra special by cutting it into shapes." Emma's face fell for just a moment before she brightened. She was getting used to disappointment, which broke Sarah's heart even more. "Can we make it look like a butterfly?" Emma asked. "Absolutely," Sarah smiled, using a knife to cut the toast diagonally. It wasn't much, but Emma giggled when Sarah presented the butterfly toast with a flourish. After walking Emma to Mrs. Patterson's apartment down the hall, Sarah caught the bus to downtown Portland. The ride took 45 minutes, giving her time to review her mental to-do list. Work the morning shift at Murphy's, pick up Emma from after-school care, work her cleaning job from 7 p.m. to midnight, and somehow figure out how to come up with $460 for rent in 5 days. Murphy's Diner was a classic American institution, red vinyl booths, checkered floors, and the smell of bacon grease that never quite left your clothes. Sarah had been working there for 8 months, ever since she'd lost her office job when the small company she worked for went bankrupt. "Morning, Sarah," called out Miguel the cook as she tied her apron. "You're looking tired, chica. You okay?" "Just another beautiful day in paradise," Sarah replied with a wry smile. Miguel was one of the good ones, always looking out for the waitresses, making sure they ate during their shifts. The morning rush started immediately. Portland's downtown workers flooded in for their coffee and breakfast before heading to offices, construction sites, and shops throughout the city. Sarah moved efficiently between tables, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and trying to earn every tip she could. Around 9:30 a.m., as the breakfast rush was winding down, an unusual customer walked in. She was an older woman, probably in her 60s, with silver-grey hair and clothes that seemed deliberately unremarkable. She wore a worn brown coat that looked like it came from a thrift store, scuffed shoes, and carried a faded canvas bag. That had seen better days, but there was something about her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and observant, that didn't quite match the humble appearance. The woman, whose name was actually Margaret Whitmore, was worth $47 million. She had inherited a fortune from her late husband's technology company and had spent the last 5 years conducting what she privately called humanity tests. Dressed down and carrying minimal cash, she would go to different cities, different establishments, and observe how people treated her when they thought she was just another struggling person. Margaret had been disappointed more often than not. People were rude, dismissive, or simply indifferent. She'd been ignored by store clerks, pushed aside by busy commuters, and treated like she was invisible by restaurant staff. Each experience had made her more cynical about human nature, but she kept testing, hoping to find proof that genuine kindness still existed in the world. "Sit anywhere you'd like, hun," Sarah called out, balancing 3 plates on her arm as she delivered breakfast to a corner booth. Margaret chose a small table near the window and waited. She watched Sarah work. The woman was clearly exhausted, but she smiled at every customer, remembered regulars' orders, and moved with the efficiency of someone who couldn't afford to waste a single motion. When Sarah approached her table, Margaret was ready with her test. "What can I get you, sweetie?" Sarah asked, pulling out her notepad. "Just coffee, please," Margaret said, her voice deliberately shaky, playing up the appearance of frailty. "And, She fumbled through her worn purse, making a show of looking for money. "Oh, no." Sarah waited patiently as Margaret continued searching through her bag. "I'm so sorry," Margaret said, looking genuinely distressed. I must have left my wallet at home. I just needed some coffee. I've been walking for hours." This was the moment of truth. Margaret had performed this same scene dozens of times in different cities. Most servers would politely but firmly ask her to leave. Some would be rude about it. A few might offer her water. Sarah looked at the older woman, really looked at her. She saw the exhaustion that seemed real enough, the way her hands shook slightly, the defeat in her shoulders. Sarah recognized that look because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. "Don't worry about it," Sarah said without hesitation. "Coffee's on me today." Margaret blinked, genuinely surprised. "Oh, I couldn't." "Sure you can," Sarah smiled. We all have those days. Let me get you some coffee and maybe a muffin. You look like you could use something to eat." "I really can't pay." "Did I ask you to pay?" Sarah winked. "I'll be right back." As Sarah walked to the coffee station, Margaret felt something she hadn't experienced in months of testing: genuine shock. This woman, who was clearly struggling herself, Margaret had noticed the worn uniform, the tired eyes, the way Sarah had glanced at the tip jar while cleaning the previous table, was offering not just coffee, but food. Sarah returned with a steaming mug of coffee and a blueberry muffin. "Here you go," Sarah said, setting them down gently. "The muffin's from yesterday, but it's still good. Miguel, our cook, he makes the best muffins in Portland." "Why?" Margaret asked quietly. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah paused, considering the question. "I guess we've all been there, you know. Times when we needed someone to be kind. And it's just coffee and a day-old muffin. No big deal." But it was a big deal to Margaret. She sipped the coffee, it was actually quite good, and watched Sarah continue working. Every few minutes, Sarah, would glance over to make sure Margaret was okay, topping off her coffee without being asked. When Margaret finished eating, she stood to leave. Sarah was wiping down a nearby table. "Thank you," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion that wasn't entirely acting. "You have no idea how much this meant to me." "Take care of yourself," Sarah replied. "And hey, if you're ever in the neighborhood and need coffee, you know where to find me." Margaret walked out of Murphy's diner, but she didn't go far. She sat in her rental car, a modest Honda part of her disguise, and made several phone calls. Then she sat and watched the diner, thinking about the woman inside who had just restored a little of her faith in humanity. Inside the diner, Sarah continued her shift, unaware that her small act of kindness was about to change everything. She went about her routine, taking orders, making conversation, hoping for good tips. By the end of her shift, she'd made $47 in tips, enough to cover Emma's after-school care for the rest of the week. As Sarah was hanging up her apron, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi Sarah, this is Margaret from this morning. Is there somewhere we could talk? I have something important to discuss with you." Sarah stared at the message, confused. How had the older woman gotten her number, and what could she possibly want to discuss? "Everything okay?" asked Linda, the evening shift waitress who was just coming in. "Yeah, I think so," Sarah said, still staring at her phone. "Just strange day, I guess." She texted back, "Hi Margaret, I'm about to leave work. Is everything all right?" The response came immediately. "Everything's fine. Actually, everything's wonderful. Could you meet me at Pioneer Courthouse Square in an hour? I promise it's good news." Sarah hesitated. She needed to pick up Emma, and she had her cleaning job later. But something about the message intrigued her. Against her better judgment, she texted back, "I can spare 30 minutes. I'll be there." As Sarah caught the bus toward downtown Portland's living room, Pioneer Courthouse Square, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The small act of kindness she'd performed that morning, something she'd already forgotten, in the rush of her busy day, was about to yield returns she never could have imagined. Pioneer Courthouse Square buzzed with its usual afternoon energy. Street performers entertained small crowds, food trucks lined the edges, and Portland's diverse population moved through the brick-paved space like a human kaleidoscope. Sarah found a bench near the fountain and checked her phone nervously. She had 25 minutes before she needed to catch the bus to Emma's after-school program. "Sarah," she turned to see Margaret approaching, but something was different. The older woman walked with more confidence, her posture straightener, and she was carrying a leather briefcase that definitely wasn't the faded canvas bag from the morning. "Margaret, hi." Sarah stood up, confused. "You look different." Margaret smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her entire face. "I need to be honest with you, Sarah. This morning, I wasn't entirely who I appeared to be." Sarah's guard went up. "What do you mean?" "Please, sit." Margaret gestured to the bench. "What I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but I promise you every word is true." Sarah sat cautiously, clutching her purse. "Okay." Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a business card. "My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm the CEO of Whitmore Technologies and the director of the Whitmore Foundation." Sarah looked at the elegant business card, then back at Margaret. "I don't understand." "This morning, I was conducting what I call a humanity test," Margaret explained. "For the past 5 years, since my husband passed away, I've been traveling to different cities, different establishments, presenting myself as someone in need. I want to see how people react when they think there's nothing to gain from helping a stranger." Sarah's mind raced. "You were testing me?" "I was testing everyone," Margaret said gently. "And Sarah, in 5 years of doing this, in dozens of cities and hundreds of interactions, you are the first person to not just help, but to do so with such genuine warmth and generosity. I don't Sarah shook her head. It was just coffee. No, Margaret said firmly. It wasn't just coffee. Do you know what most people do when I perform that same scenario? They tell me to leave. Some call me a scammer. Others just ignore me completely. One waitress in Denver actually laughed at me. Sarah felt a flush of anger. That's awful. It is awful. It's made me lose faith in people, in humanity itself. But you... Margaret's eyes filled with tears. You saw a person in need, and without question, without judgment, you helped. You gave from your own pocket, money I could see you needed to help a complete stranger. Anyone would have done the same thing, Sarah said, uncomfortable with the praise. That's where you're wrong, Margaret replied. I have empirical evidence that most people wouldn't. But you did, and that changes everything. Margaret reached into her briefcase again and pulled out a manila envelope. Sarah, I've spent the last few hours learning about you. I know about your daughter Emma. I know you work 2 jobs. I know you're struggling to make rent. Sarah tensed. How do you... I have resources, Margaret said simply, and I use them to verify that the kindness I witness is genuine. I had to make sure you weren't performing kindness for some ulterior motive. This is getting weird, Sarah said, starting to stand up. I think I should go. Please. Margaret put a gentle hand on Sarah's arm. Just let me finish. Then, if you want to leave, I'll understand completely. Sarah sat back down, but remained poised to leave. Sarah, my husband, built Whitmore Technologies from nothing. When he died, he left me with more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But he also left me with a responsibility. He believed that wealth should reward goodness, that success should lift up those who make the world better through their actions. Margaret opened the envelope and pulled out a document. This morning you proved that genuine human kindness still exists. You restored my faith in humanity. And for that, I want to change your life. She handed Sarah the document. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the letterhead, Whitmore Foundation Grant Program. What is this? Sarah whispered. It's a $50,000 grant, Margaret said. No strings attached, it's yours. Sarah's vision blurred. She read the number again. $50,000. It was more money than she'd seen in her entire life. I can't accept this, she stammered. This is too much. I just bought you coffee. You bought a stranger coffee when you couldn't afford to buy your daughter pancakes? Margaret said softly. You gave when you had nothing to give. That's not just kindness, Sarah. That's heroism. Sarah began to cry, big, silent tears that rolled down her cheeks. You don't understand. We're about to be evicted. I can't make rent. Emma's been asking for things I can't buy her. I've been failing as a mother. No, Margaret said firmly. You've been succeeding as a human being. And sometimes, Sarah, the universe rewards that. She reached into the briefcase again and pulled out another document. But the grant is just the beginning. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at the second paper. It was a job offer. Community Outreach Director, Whitmore Foundation, Sarah read aloud. Salary, $65,000 annually, plus benefits. I need someone to help me identify and reward kindness, Margaret explained. Someone who understands what it means to struggle, what it means to choose compassion, even when you have nothing. I need someone like you. Sarah stared at the documents, then at Margaret, then back at the documents. This isn't real. This can't be real. It's real, Margaret smiled. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity. You earned this, your kindness this morning. That was you investing in the world. This is just your return on that investment. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the job. Say you'll help me find more people like you. Say you'll help me prove that goodness still exists in the world. Sarah looked around Pioneer Courthouse Square at all the people rushing past, living their own struggles, fighting their own battles. How many of them would have bought coffee for a stranger? How many acts of kindness happened every day that went unnoticed, unrewarded? What would I have to do? She asked. Travel with me sometimes. Help identify genuine need versus scams. Help design programs that reward goodness. Use your experience to guide how we distribute resources to people who truly deserve them. Sarah thought about Emma, about the tiny apartment, about the broken coffee maker and the daily struggle just to survive. Then she thought about this morning, about the older woman who had seemed so lost and defeated. She had helped because it was the right thing to do, never imagining it would lead to this moment. What if I mess up? Sarah asked. What if I'm not good at it? Impossible, Margaret said. You've already proven you have the most important qualification, a good heart. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, yes, I'll take the job. Margaret's face broke into a brilliant smile. Excellent. You start Monday. And Sarah, take the rest of this week off. Spend time with Emma. Buy her those pancakes. Buy yourself a real bed to sleep on. As they stood up, Sarah impulsively hugged Margaret. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means. I have every idea, Margaret replied, hugging her back. You gave me hope, Sarah. Now I'm returning the favor. 3 hours later, Sarah sat in her tiny apartment with Emma on her lap, both of them staring at the grant check on their little kitchen table. Mommy, is that really our money? Emma asked for the 5th time. It really is, baby, Sarah said, still hardly believing it herself. Can we get pancakes now? Sarah laughed, a deep, joyful sound she hadn't made in months. We can get pancakes. We can get our own apartment with a real bedroom for me. We can get you new clothes that actually fit. We can get anything we need. What about what we want? Emma asked hopefully. Sarah kissed the top of her daughter's head. Some of that too, sweetheart. Some of that too. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sarah stood at their small window looking out at the Portland skyline. She thought about the morning, about the simple decision to buy coffee for a stranger. She had acted from instinct, from compassion, never dreaming it would change everything. Her phone buzzed, a text from Margaret. Thank you for restoring my faith in humanity. I can't wait to work with you to find more people like you. The world is full of kindness. We just need to know where to look. See you Monday. Sarah smiled and typed back, thank you for showing me that kindness is always rewarded, even when we don't expect it. I'm ready to change the world. C. As she finally prepared to sleep in her own bed, the first real bed she'd had in months, delivered that afternoon thanks to Margaret's connections, Sarah reflected on the day's events. She had learned that a small act of kindness could change not just one life, but 2 lives, and potentially countless others as they worked together to identify and reward goodness in the world. Sometimes, Sarah thought as she drifted off to sleep, the universe was just waiting for someone to take the first step toward kindness. And sometimes, when you take that step, the universe steps up to meet you. The next morning, for the first time in months, Sarah woke up not to an alarm, but to the sound of Emma laughing in the kitchen, making pancakes on their new stove, in their new apartment, in their new life. All because of a $3 cup of coffee and the unshakable belief that everyone deserves kindness, no matter who they are or what they can give in return. In a world that often seemed cold and uncaring, Sarah Mitchell and Margaret Whitmore had found each other, proving that genuine human goodness not only exists, but can multiply, spread, and change the world, one cup of coffee at a time. Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.